Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of the SkillShine25 podcast. My name is Varun, a local high schooler, and I'm joined by my friend Veer. Today we're meeting Mr. Kyle Young, currently the Chief Commercial Officer for The Chosen, and he actually started out as a French teacher, moving to marketing and sales, and eventually co-founding Tiny Horse, a company working to engage audience in digital media. And Mr. Young, we're going to go ahead and let you just introduce yourself real quick for the audience.
Hey guys, hello everybody. Yep, Kyle Young. Lived here in Charlotte for about 23 years. Love it here. Have 3 kids, some of them at Myers Park High School. Very diverse career, but mostly in entertainment and television,
Right.
which is a little bit unusual in Charlotte. You get mostly banking and doctors and consultants and that type of thing here. Being in TV and working in entertainment has been a very interesting career. It wasn't something that I picked. It was it just sort of fell into my lap, but I've just loved it, and it's been really exciting and a really rewarding path.
Wow.
So,
Real quickly, sorry. Do you mind moving your microphone up a little bit?
Yeah, no problem. How's that? Is that better?
That's better.
You can tell.
Oh, well, I'm just trying to make sure we don't have any issues going forward.
Okay.
But now that we know more about your impressive career, would you mind elaborating on what your current role is as EVP and Chief Revenue Officer?
Yeah. So at The Chosen, which is actually, we've just rebranded as 5 and 2 Studios, because The Chosen is the name of the main TV series, but now we're launching new shows. So we didn't want to just be like, the show that brings you the shows. So now it's called 5 and 2 Studios. My role is essentially overseeing all the business aspects and revenue aspects of the company that aren't tied to the actual making of the show. So you have the production team that actually makes the show, that films the show, edits the show, and all that. And then my job is distributing the show, so like getting deals done on Netflix or Amazon and other streamers like that around the world, other TV networks. Also doing theatrical distribution, so getting the show in movie theaters, which is something unique that we do. Marketing the show, all of our social media teams, our press, our publicity, working with the cast to do that. All of our international teams, we have teams in about 25 countries around the world.
Wow.
And all that is all my responsibility, and it's my pleasure to lead it every day.
That's good. You're like the treasurer for the company.
Well, that's the CFO. The CFO would be the treasurer. My job is to help bring the money in. So our job is to market and monetize the show. Okay. And then the CFO then helps make sure that we're managing all that money well, and that we're planning around how that money gets spent and all that.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, so going ahead on to the next question. So looking back, as you said, you didn't know how you got to being into this industry. So what interests and mentors helped you get into the digital media and entertainment industry? And can you explain go ahead and just tell us that first.
Well, I'll tell you the story about how I got into TV, and then we can unpack that a little bit more. So I went to Furman University down in Greenville, South Carolina, kind of a local school here. But I grew up in France and Morocco before that. I moved to France when I was 2 and then lived in Morocco until I was in middle school.
Wow.
And so I had this real international upbringing. And then after college, I went and worked on a sailboat in the Middle East for a year.
Really?
And I sailed up and down the Red Sea over into Saudi Arabia and Yemen and Egypt and all these places. And after I came back from that, my dad was like, all right, you got to get a job. My degree was in political science and French, so it wasn't a really applicable degree into what are you going to do. So I became a middle school French teacher, and I was teaching middle school French at Sedgefield Middle School. Did that for 2 years. It was really fun, but I could tell it wasn't what I really wanted to do the rest of my life. So after 2 years, the emergency certification that I was using to do that ended, and so I ended up becoming a bartender at Selwyn Pub. So I was bartending at Selwyn Pub, right up there on Selwyn Avenue. And I was working there for about 6 months. Lee and I had just gotten married, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And randomly, a friend of my parents called me up and was like, hey, I know a guy who manages some properties and blah, 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 kind of a long story. Do you want to go do that? I was like, I don't really want to do that. But I said, don't you work, I think you work for a TV company. And I recently heard you guys are going to launch international TV network. I was like, look, I don't know anything about TV, but I actually know a lot of people internationally. Maybe I could be of help. So I got hired in. It is the first hire for their international TV network selling ad sales, which is basically just selling advertising time on the network for people to buy it. So that's how I got my foot in the door. I started doing that, and then I worked my way up. That was all through the cable side of the TV business. And I didn't know anything about digital. This was back when you would buy like from Time Warner Cable or DirecTV, like buy a bundle, you get 200 channels, and that's it. There was no digital aspect to that really. Not in the way that we know digital today. And so I worked there for about 8 years, just really getting to know all the cable TV side of the business. And then in 2012, we sold one of those channels that we were working on. And as a part of that, I then sort of had a career choice to make. Do I stay, kind of keep working on these cable networks and doing that? Or do I look to pivot? And there was a couple friends of mine who were leaving a network that was called MTV. You guys probably don't even know. You've heard of that? All right.
Yes.
Well, it used to be a really big deal. Now MTV is way smaller.
Right.
But they were leaving MTV to go start doing programming basically on Facebook. Instagram barely exists at this time, and YouTube for some of these big TV shows out in LA. And their first contract was to work on this show called The X Factor, which was with Simon Cowell.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
And it was this big deal show, and we're working for Fox. And so I was like, look, I don't know anything about digital, but I want to learn digital. And so I stepped out of traditional cable TV and went onto the digital side. So that was about 13 years ago.
Wow.
Wow.
So really your learning experience happened a lot more after you ended like your traditional education after college. And I feel like a lot of people forget like you can always learn more after you graduate and like start a real job, because everyone wants a set plan, like I go into college and then I get a job and then it's going to be like that for the rest of my life. But as you can see, that like wasn't your path, but it ended up working out better for you than what most people might think.
Yeah, I mean, when you're thinking about your career, I mean, I think you could go like down a professional track where you're like, okay, I'm going to train to be a doctor, and then I'm going to go specialize in this doctor, and then I'm going to go do that the rest of my life. And some people, I think that's a great choice for, and in some ways that could be better. But for me, that just wasn't how the path worked out. And so part of my challenge has always been, whatever role I'm in, I've always got to learn the new stuff. In this role, I knew very little about theatrical distribution, about how to distribute a movie in movie theaters around the world until I came here. And so I've had to learn the theatrical business from scratch. And it's been fun, really fun, a great challenge. And I really feel like it helps you keep your skills sharp, your brain sharp. It's fun to always learn new things. So I think being a learner and being somebody who's always looking to learn new things and be pushed is a really great attribute.
Would you say that there are any places in your formal education that actually ended up translating into what you do now? Or would you say it all came after?
That's a great question. I think that what I learned through formal education was how to write, how to communicate, how to process information and synthesize information and be able to then communicate effectively. So even though my degree was in political science, there's a lot of what you do in everyday work, just getting through that information and how to learn and process information. But there wasn't like, oh, this political science class that I took or something like that helped me. I mean, French has been helpful in my work because I work all over the world, and French is one of the top, spoken languages. Right. In fact, it's the fastest growing spoken language in the world right now because Africa is the fastest growing continent in the world now. Asia has slowed down its growth, and so as far as new people speaking new languages, it's French. Anyway, so French has been really helpful in business partnerships and all of that. So, but I kind of knew it already from my childhood, so it's really more of a formal education. So yeah, not as much. Not as much at all.
That's good to know.
So
but what I would say is the relationships that you make in college and those relationships, how you kind of work with those over the course of your life are really important.
Yeah, you touched on how when you first entered, you were, where you showed that you had a little bit of power was where you had those connections internationally.
Yeah.
And that is so valuable. I mean, we've done only a couple of these interviews, but each time we've interviewed a person, they've said, the relationships you make with people, the connections that you can make with people is so valuable, not even in your career, but in your lifestyle.
Yeah, totally.
So then, actually, like talking about like how you was an international member. So launching all these media networks in over 80 countries, how did that shape the way you lead your company today and build partnerships going forward? Like, what did you learn from talking to many people around the world that could translate to people today when it comes to like meeting new people or building connections?
Yeah. Well, So the Chosen TV series, which is now the main thing that I'm working on, is a global phenomenon. And when I first joined the company, the show was embraced in a lot of different countries around the world, but it hadn't really traveled and hadn't been available in as many like TV networks and that type of stuff. So one of the first jobs that I had when I joined the company was actually to build out teams in all these countries around the world that would help manage the brand, that would help manage social media, that would do all of that. So in each country that you work in, there's always a different culture, a different way of working, a different kind of audience to connect with. And so building out one of those teams around the world has been one of my big joys. And now we operate social media in 18 different languages every day.
Wow.
It's the fastest growing part of the company as far as new audience and new people engaging with the show. We're growing about 1 million new social media followers a month right now.
Wow.
With roughly about 8 to 10% engagement from that audience, which is like 2 to 3 times the average TV show engagement size. So it's been super exciting. When we released season 5 theatrically at Easter this year, and we released that in 55 countries around the world.
Wow.
A lot of the overperformance of the show was actually in foreign countries. We had incredible performance in India. Yeah, we're in the top English performing movies in India this year.
Wow.
As a TV show. So it's the international aspect of this and getting to know those different teams and cultures and building all that up has been just a complete joy.
Wow. And also, how do you keep like your composure during this time where like you meet a lot of like different people from all around the world? And also, like for the viewers, he was part of selling like Tiny Horse to Whistle Sports, right?
Yep.
So how do you keep your composure when you work with so many reputable brands, like, and it's like all at once? Like, how would you go about doing that process?
How do you stay grounded?
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, one is try to sleep well. I
Yeah.
would say as best you can. I think knowing that. I mean, there's a couple different things over the years. One thing that one of my early bosses told me back when I was in the early days of TV, when I would get overloaded with everything so much there is to do and how do you get through the day, is he said, look, there's always going to be more work to do tomorrow. Like, do the best you can today, get through as much as you can, make your mark today, and then pick up your shovel again the next day. You can't get everything done in a single day.
Right.
So just know it's going to be a process to get through these things. The second thing is like know that it's going to be hard at times. Like there is going to be challenges. It is going to be hard. That's part of the work, and that's part of the pleasure of it if you can anticipate that. And know that that's why you're here. Like if this was easy, we wouldn't need you to do it. So like when you go through these things and you're under a lot of pressure, it's like, oh, okay, like this is good. This means I'm, providing some value because I'm taking on this work and I'm getting it done. Lastly, as it relates to the complexity of like relationships and getting through those hard things, I would just say having great team members. At Tiny Horse, I had 3 great partners who we were able to talk about all the challenges together, weekly, if not on a daily basis, and share like in those challenges together and talk about that. Now at The Chosen, we've just got an awesome team. And so whether like next week we're doing a screening in Rome at the Vatican, the Pope might show up.
Really?
And like, so that would be super cool. And like, I'm excited about that. But the team's working on the event and making it awesome. You got to trust that they're going to do a good job and you have good people. So it's kind of a lot of those things. Great team, get some good sleep, know that you can't knock it all out perfect, do the best you can.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but The Chosen is a fairly religious show, right?
Well, it's about a religious topic.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously Jesus is a religious figure, but he's also a historical figure.
Right.
So in the same way that The Crown is about historical figures, it's not necessarily a religious show. So the show is not trying to convince you of like Christianity or anything like that. It's just telling the story of Jesus. And then it's also, half of it is made up because it's not just verbatim what's happened in the Bible or what those stories are. It's also filling in the gaps of things that weren't in the Bible. So we have characters that weren't in the Bible that we created, but they're all plausible. They're things that could have happened, and they're storylines and things that we're adding to kind of bring the characters to life and bring the human story to life.
Well, the reason I asked that is because in order to be, I'm guessing that you are interested in this topic because you share a passion for it. How has religion played an impact on your life and your growth as a person?
Yeah. I think there's a couple things as far as my personal faith, if that's the question you're asking, which I think it is. Not so much about religious entertainment or religious business. Personally, I think the way that my faith has influenced the way that I work is a lot of it has to do with working through those challenging situations and trusting that there's a bigger plan in place and that I'm being utilized to help kind of on that adventure to accomplish kind of the goals of where God is kind of leading the world. And so that's been a part of my ethos since kind of early age. I was kind of brought up in that mindset of trusting that God has a plan for your life and that he's going to help you navigate and kind of use you along that path so that you're on this kind of adventure and in this broader mission and kind of adventure together, and that God's directing that. So then that's when things go bad, you can have faith and trust that, like, okay, this is kind of on some path here of a plan that I may not ultimately understand, but that I have trust and faith that I'm kind of being utilized and worked in this way. And that's what was so amazing about joining The Chosen was it was completely came out of the blue. It was a person I hadn't talked to in 6 or 7 years, called me about the job, and it was perfect timing from leaving Whistle Sports.
Right.
And so it was, that's probably the biggest way that I kind of feel like my faith and work life connect.
Wow. And also going to Whistle Sports, I heard like you actually did side basketball from Dude Perfect. So what was it like working with like all of them off the camera? And how does it feel when you like work with someone you've seen on like TV and YouTube? Is it like, do you feel like a little pressure, or is it just more natural?
Well, I think you always want to, be sensitive in those moments when you're meeting celebrities. Right. A lot of people come up to them and are always kind of trying to ask them about things and all that. But a lot of those people are normal people. And so you just have to think about, okay, what's the right environment here? How do I connect with this person? How can I help this person? What are ways I can encourage them? What are things that we're working on together they may be confused about? And so that's kind of how I always approach whatever celebrities I'm meeting or working with. Whether it's the dudes, whether it's like Zach King, who's a big fan of The Chosen, whether it's movie stars on movies that we're on, all kinds of different stuff. Is like the other day I met Chris Pratt on the airplane. I just sat down on the plane. Chris Pratt came and sat down right next to me. And we were like literally flying to South Africa. He was out filming Terminal List 2. And so we just talked about life. And he told me about all this cool stuff in the Bible that he's exploring and all these. It was amazing. So you just have to remember these people are real people. And if you don't press in too much and if you kind of know that they're under a lot of pressure most of the time, you can really build some great relationships like that.
Wow. Right. I mean, going back to working with people like Dude Perfect, they've obviously stayed relevant for a long period of time. They figured out how to crack the code with getting attention, gaining viewership, even showing growth. What are some pieces of advice for people that are trying to reach a larger audience? What would you say is a great way to, in modern age, to stay relevant, get attention, show that you're out there?
Yeah. Well, obviously this is a big new world now with all the access on the social platforms and being able to create your own content. I would say there's a lot of different books actually out there on this. For instance, one of our co-founders at The Chosen wrote this book called The YouTube Formula that he actually works with Mr. Beast really closely. They've been working together since Jimmy was 17 and kind of working together on strategies on audience building and audience development. There's a lot of different things in there, but one I would say is kind of know your story and then understand your audience and then super serve that core audience. So what is the story that you're telling? What is the content that you're providing? What is the format like you guys are doing here is great. And then think about what is your audience valuing as you do that. And make sure that every time you serve them content, you're providing something of value to them that they're going to make it worth their time. Because all of the platforms and algorithms, the way they work, is completely incentivized around people engaging with your content. Right, exactly. So if you serve up something that people are like, oh, this is cool, I really like it, this is worth my time and everything, then you're going to then get that audience as a core member. And if you keep serving that type of audience, they'll serve it up to more of that type of people, and then you'll grow your audience that way. So that's sort of the basic building block is know your story, know what your value is that you're providing to your audience, and then lean into that. And then as that gets going, then expand and learn. I mean, you've got to be, it takes a lot of, I would say, hard work. I mean, building audiences today is not easy. I think people think it looks easy, but it's actually a lot of work. And so be ready for that work, be ready for that commitment, and just always be willing to listen to your audience and go from there. And that's kind of been one of the cool things comparing The Chosen to, for instance, when I first started working for the X Factor back in 2012, is it's like the same idea. Like, what are you providing of value to this audience of something that they love? And how are you letting them go deeper into that topic, into you as, people on camera? What do they like about you as people? And that's the same thing between The Chosen or the X Factor or American Idol or Dude Perfect, is doing that over and over.
It's honestly like, this might be a little bit of a stretch, but it kind of reminds me of like a spider web, because like the middle of the web is like very small. It's like a small like little circle, but the more you grow, the more you connect with people, the more you gain a core audience, you start to build the spider web. It gets like bigger and bigger. Like it starts small with just like a few circles like in the middle because you have a small audience. But as you said, if you just keep serving that audience, the web is only gonna get bigger and bigger as like the circle starts showing more and more, and then you have a whole web and stuff. So
that's right. And I think part of that is, as you make those connections, is actually make those personal connections. Right. I mean, it's really hard to answer every message that people give you, but that was in the very early days of The Chosen, when literally nobody was watching the show. Today we've had over 300 million people watch the show. This is back when there was like just a couple thousand people watching the show. Dallas Jenkins, the actual creator and director of the film, would stay up all night personally messaging everybody and thanking them for watching the series when they were making comments on YouTube, on Facebook, etc. And so he built that audience and that trust and connectivity with that audience through that.
Wow. See, that's what it takes. It takes effort. It takes hard work. I mean, next question I wanted to ask was, in the modern age, we're seeing a dieback from long-form media toward short-form media. Have you seen that impact the TV industry? And how have you adjusted to fit the norms of society?
Well, what's interesting is that people still love watching movies.
Right.
They still love watching TV shows. But now you have things like YouTube Shorts and TikTok really taking off, which are generally shorter format. So it's a little bit of knowing like the platform and the audience, and for when are people going to consume those things, and how are you going to deliver that content. So our content strategy includes creating specialized content for all platforms. So like if you went to our Facebook page, you'd be getting very different content than if you went to our TikTok handle.
Really?
But also very different content than if you go to our Amazon Prime landing page where there's hour-long episodes. So it's not necessarily that I think people are like less inclined to like long content. They are just able to consume more short clips.
Right.
And its short clip delivery has become its own whole thing. But there's been some big swings on like short form content space that have been really, really tough and failed. Like for instance, about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a thing called Quibi that attracted a huge amount of investment from the media industry. It was started by Jeffrey Katzenberg, super famous former Disney executive that co-founded DreamWorks Entertainment. Started this thing, short form entertainment's going to be the future of the world. And they spent all this money on building out this custom platform, making all these shows with a bunch of celebrities. And they launched it, and like 6 months later they turned it off.
Wow.
Because it wasn't working. And so it's not necessarily like, oh, it's just short content versus long content. It's a lot more about like how that content comes to life. What is it about what people are liking there? I mean, a lot of what people are watching on short form content is literally like, YouTube fails. Right. And I mean, I can't like clips of sports highlights and things like that. So it's not. You'll notice that a lot of the short form content isn't produced as short form content. At least that's, so this is all evolving. And the media landscape today is changing faster than ever.
And one other thing I would like to ask about is like, how do you know when to like change up your content? Because as you said, what you post on Facebook is different from what you post on TikTok. And then the example you gave us with that company, like how do you know to shift away from what you're currently doing? Do you just shift when it's not working, or do you just keep trying and then shift? Like, when do you know when to change everything up and stuff?
Well, I think you got to find what's working.
Right.
So if nothing's working, you got to do something different. Right? So, but as things work, then do more of that thing.
Okay.
So you got to do enough different things to then see what's going to work. And then you got to make sure you look at your data and look at, what audience and fans are saying about that content, how they're engaging with it, and then lean into that trend. So I would say it's rarely going to be like, oh, we need to reboot everything from scratch and start over, because in this world today, you're getting real-time data from all of your audience all the time. So, yeah, it's more about listening to your fans, responding to things that they are saying, being insightful about that data, and going from there.
Mm-hmm. Next question we have is, for high schoolers who are passionate about media, marketing, or even launching a business, what's the best way for them to get real exposure and start learning early?
Well, there's so many different routes you can go with media, marketing, entertainment. I mean, you could work in an agency here in town on the marketing side. You could work with a design firm doing graphic design or social media assets. There's a number of entertainment companies here in Charlotte, mostly production companies. There's a few cable networks like the Inspiration Networks where I started my career. And you can go be an intern there or be a PA. You could also try to be an intern on a production, try to get a connection through that. The other thing is, in this world, you don't have to wait to get a job in that space. You can literally do what you guys are doing. I mean, you guys are doing entertainment and production work right now.
Right.
So you can start self-publishing and creating your own content, whether that's with yourself as the person on camera or doing interviews with other people or just making content that you're passionate about. So there's a lot of different ways to access the entertainment and marketing and media industry today. It's all from just going and doing it yourself, figuring out how to run your own. I mean, you could launch your own products company today and literally just try to flip products on Amazon. Right. I would say, like, looking at people like Gary Vee, you could see, I mean, that guy's constantly encouraging people to make their own content and flip their own products that they're buying at garage sales and all kinds of things, to Scott Galloway, who's kind of more, kind of a later in stage life coach, more for college people and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of different voices out there. And that would be the other thing is like learn from the best. I mean, the best coaches in this space are available for free on the internet. Right. So be passionate about it. Be a learner. Go watch this stuff. Join, masterclass and, watch a bunch of videos on there. You can 1 month free. You can consume half the content on that platform in a month. Right. Any of those types of like curiosity and learnings, things are going to pay off really well.
And then speaking about passion, this might be like a little bit more like you might have to think about it, but what is like the one moment like throughout your entire career that you really discovered like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life? Because as you said, you started off as a French teacher and then you were on the sailboat and stuff. So what was that one moment that like you really decided this is really what I want to do or what I want to focus on?
I think when I finally started in TV, and that was kind of like when I shifted because what I'm really in is like the business side of TV. Yeah. So I'm not making TV shows myself. I'm really a business guy. Right. And what I found was I had a passion for business. And it just so happened that it was in the medium of television that was fun and cool and interesting. So I think that combination is what really got me excited. I did not have a lot of drive around business like in college at all. Like I didn't. It was like I never thought I'd do that. I didn't know what I was going to be. I grew up as a missionary kid, so I thought, who knows? I'm going to be maybe I'll be like a journalist in Africa or something like that. Or I didn't know what I was going to do. I really didn't have a plan. But once I got into business and I started understanding the dynamics of business and kind of effort and reward and kind of bringing a product to market and connecting with audiences and selling things, that was very exciting for me and very rewarding to be able to see that type of success. And then in that environment, once I started getting some feedback from my supervisors, from my boss, that like I was doing a good job, that also was super confirmatory. It just felt like, oh wow, these people really seem to like how my brain works in this space. And so when I felt that connection with like that I was providing something of value, I felt like, okay, business is the right space for me. And then TV just seems to be like a cool and fun medium to be doing that work in, or film or whatever inside the media industry. And then once you start to then dig in and you peel back the layers and you're like, oh, this is really interesting to me. Like, it's possible that I could be interested in business about like selling plumbing pieces, to people. I don't know. I've never tried that. But I just find the entertainment industry very challenging. It's very difficult. And it's still fun, though, even in the challenge. Right. So that's sort of, so it was pretty early on that I was like, I want to stay in this industry as much as I can. Yeah.
And a lot of people like I talked to today, like when we asked about like what's the future, they all just like want like investment banking or jobs that like with high pay. But as we're learning through this interview, I feel like self-fulfillment is much more important than like what you're getting paid, because throughout like your entire career, like after a while, like your salary won't affect you as much as what you're doing and how you feel about your job every single day. So I feel like a lot of students today should really realize that what they want to do in the future is more what fulfills them and
Yeah.
their own passions over just like the money and like their plans after.
Well, I mean, like you touched on, if you have a passion for something, you're going to put more effort into that topic. You're going to put more effort into that area, and that's where you get the reward
Right.
and you get the benefits. Because even if you're going into some place where and you genuinely don't enjoy that job, you're not
Right.
going to do a good job.
Exactly.
You're not going to perform well. And it's really those people that say, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And that go there and they grow their business. They grow what they have and they scale up and do well.
Yeah, I would say it's like a Venn diagram of probably three things
Right.
if you're thinking about your career. One, what am I could be passionate about? It can also just be like, what am I interested in?
Yeah.
What am I actually like when I get up every day? I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool and interesting. Like this topic is curious to me. Like I can see myself spending that time there. So even as an investment banker, don't pick that job because you think it's going to make a lot of money.
Right.
Pick it because, oh, I like analyzing companies. I like doing a lot of math and like complicated kind of financial models. And I like being in a high pressure environment with high stakes. Like, okay, great. Maybe investment banking is a good fit for you. But so I would say one, it's interest. Secondly, it's like capability. Like, what am I good at? What can I do well? Like, you wouldn't want to say, well, I want to be a movie star, and then you're actually like a dud on camera. Like,
Right.
okay, well, this would be really interesting to me to be a movie star. Well, guess what? I'm sorry, you're like not good. Okay. And then thirdly is like, what can I make a living at? Like, what of those two things, my passion and my capabilities, will somebody pay me for? And
Right.
ideally, paying me the maximum value for what I can bring to the table. Of course, that changes over time. At the beginning, you might not be worth a lot because you're learning the thing. But over time, you can be more and more valuable. And a lot of that has to do with like your management capabilities, not just the industry you're in. It has to do with the opportunity that the field that you're in is growing in. I mean, in today's world, if you're picking a job because of the amount of money you can make on it, AI is probably going to be a huge challenge for any of those fields.
Right.
So the only way to really like, I think, it's not even a real insurance policy, but if at least it like maximizes your capabilities and it's something that you're interested or passionate about, then you can navigate through sort of the challenges of what part of that job is going to be taken over by AI.
And kind of ending off, like I know we talked a lot about the positives, but it's also important to talk about like some setbacks you've had. So what is one of like the biggest challenges or unpredictable moments, and since the media industry is so fast paced, that you've had throughout your career that you would like to share to show everyone that setbacks can also lead to growth too? So
Yeah. Well, I think like one of the, I would say there's two examples of that. One would be when we were at Tiny Horse and we were growing that business, it was a very diverse company. We had production revenue, we had consulting revenue, we had ad sales revenue. And one of our biggest clients was a platform called Voodoo, VUD.
Oh, yeah, I've heard
that was owned by Walmart. And it was essentially their like DVD digital rental
Right.
system. And we helped build out their ad-supported side of that, their AVOD business, where you would watch TV shows or movies for free and you would just get ads in exchange for your time watching it, just like a lot of streaming platforms now have ads. And we were helping build all that, and it was becoming a more and more significant part of our business. And then we found out that Walmart was selling Voodoo, and they were selling it to NBC, and NBC already had all those capabilities, and we wouldn't be needing to do that part of our business anymore. So it was a huge part of our company that was essentially getting like turned off, something that we had spent a lot of time and energy building. And the pivot then needing to like work out how that would work really ultimately is what led us to sell to Whistle Sports.
right.
And kind of getting into a bigger ecosystem with a little bit more hedge on revenue diversification and like letting that grow in that direction, being inside a bigger publishing business. And doing that, I just learned a ton, going through that transaction, learning how to integrate into a new company, and then ultimately leaving there to then go join The Chosen and setting that up to do that. At the time, I think it felt like hard. Like it felt like, oh man, we've worked so hard to build this part of the business. Now we're turning it off. We're going to lay off some people. And then now we're selling the company. And so that was challenging. But then ultimately ended up on this path to end up where I am now. And I think, but I learned so much through that whole process.
Wow.
And it wasn't the end of the world. Sometimes what feels like the end of the world is not. Sometimes what you feel like is going to be the demise of things ends up being like actually the most interesting part. So that would be one example of a challenge that ended up being then cool in the end. Joining Whistle Sports and then ultimately joining The Chosen. But the other challenge would be just how do you balance your work life with your personal life?
Right, which is a huge thing.
And
People forget.
it's, as a dad, as a husband, and I think work it's an adventure, it's fun and exciting, and making sure that you're also seeing the same value out of that at home, and that you're connecting with your family in that way, and that you're bringing them into your life, into your work life, and so, back and forth, and that you're creating something that's holistic and not just, where you're just pouring your whole life into your work.
I mean, the final thing I have is, if you could go back to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give?
That's a good question. I would say, in my early part of my career, I used to experience more stress.
Right.
Like you were asking about, how do you manage these high pressure situations? And I think I would tell myself like, hey, just keep doing your best every day. It's all going to work out. Trust the process, and enjoy your life. Like enjoy the people that you're with, enjoy your friends, enjoy your family, and enjoy those pieces as much as you're stressing about your work. and so that's what I would coach myself on.
Well,
Yeah.
And also, before we end off, I really need to know, what's your top 5 movie list? Because I feel like since you've been in this business for so long, like I really need just like some good movies to watch. So.
Oh my gosh, I'm just gonna name all the like best known movies, but let's see. I mean, these are in no particular order.
Right. Okay.
And these would probably not even be necessarily top 5, but these are probably 5 in the top 20. But amazing films. I mean, honestly, Mission Impossible: Last Reckoning that just came out, I thought it was incredible.
Really?
I've heard mixed reviews about it. So
you just have to appreciate some of the scenes about how
Right.
difficult they were to make. The submarine scene, crazy. The final airplane scene, crazy.
Right. You definitely have a deeper appreciation than some other audience members, for sure.
Yeah, that's probably true. I love classics like Gladiator,
Okay.
Braveheart. Actually, a movie that's also related to submarines that was one of the first movies that I loved as a kid was Hunt for Red October. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. But it's a great kind of Soviet era Cold War Tom Clancy book that was turned into a film. And then lastly, I always loved the Bond franchise. So all the James Bond movies. And funny enough, just last week I was in Italy, in a town, actually in the last Bond movie, No Time to Die. There was this scene that was shot in this like old ancient stone village where Bond is racing around on a motorcycle and they're trying to shoot him and all this kind of stuff. And I was in that same town.
Really?
And it was so cool being there. Like, I remember watching that scene, and he also then gets in his old Aston Martin DB7, and he's like doing donuts and shooting everybody with the headlight guns. I love all that stuff. And so I was walking around the like piazza last week right down there in southern Italy and seeing all that. And so I love seeing like the real places that they shot movies and movies that I like and came to life. So, yep.
who do you have winning the NBA Finals?
I am not into the NBA.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah, I know.
Can't get into it?
So I haven't been able to get into it. So yeah, who are you guys rooting for?
I got Pacers. Pacers in 5.
Pacers in 6.
Okay.
6? Nah, I got them in 5.
I
Bro.
think
They're winning
so.
tonight.
That's good. But Mr. Kyle Young, currently Chief Commercial Officer for The Chosen, I think we'll end it there.
Thanks,
you so
guys.
much for your time.
Great
you
to
so much.
get some time together.